Hey, I'm Jonathan, and this is rad-head. Today I'm building this set of weird looking shapes. They all share a pretty mind-boggling property. They all have a constant width. This means that you can actually roll on top of them as though they were circles. Pretty cool, right? In order to build each of the rollers, I started by transferring the printed template onto the wood. I did this by brushing a thin coat of water-based polyurethane onto a piece of 18mm birch plywood. I printed the template using a laser printer, not an inkjet, and placed the template facing down. I squeezed out the excess polyurethane from underneath the template using a public transport card. After a couple of hours, I treated the template with a soaking wet sock, then peeling off the paper with my fingers. When it dried, I used the jigsaw and roughly cut the shape. The shapes need to be fairly accurate, so I didn't want to get too close to the line. I'll do most of the work on the sander. I traced the shape on the remainder of the piece of plywood and cut it as well. I temporarily joined the two shapes together with a few brad nails. Then, it's off to the sander. I placed the belt sander on its side, shimming its back with a few pieces of cardstock until exactly square to the table. This is crucial for getting the two shapes exactly the same. Again, double checking for square. I need to roughly find the center of the shape. I do this by drawing lines in a specific distance from the table. This gives me a smaller shape to guesstimate its center. I drilled partway through until it just reached the bottom shape. I separated the two pieces, which was easier than anticipated, and drilled both shapes partway through with a 5/8 inch Forstner bit. I cut a small piece of copper pipe, dropping the cutter along with it. A few passes with steel wool, and it's time to assemble the roller with a simple friction fit. Now I can bring some of its friends. It felt like something is still missing, so I decided to build a nice holder to showcase these shapes. I cut a piece of plywood slightly wider than each of the shapes and long enough to accommodate 5 of them. I need to cut a rabbet all around the base to fit an acrylic lid. Instead of measuring the thickness of the acrylic and setting the fence accordingly, it's much easier to simply put a piece of acrylic between the fence and the base. This way we're adding the desired thickness to our cut without having to measure anything. The base will also be used to roll on top of our shapes, so it needs some sort of grippy material on the bottom. I went with cork since it's decorative and I had some leftovers on hand. I spray glued it and trimmed the excess with a utility knife. Now I started working on the cover. I cut a sheet of 2mm acrylic into the desired dimensions. I discovered that by cutting slow right when the piece leaves the blade, I get no chipping. I removed the inner protective sheet from all the pieces and taped them together, using the base as a holder. I flipped the cover upside down, filled the syringe with acrylic solvent, and started fusing the pieces together. This is not glue. This actually melts the pieces together for an extremely tough joint. My solvent came unlabeled, so I don't know the exact composition. But I do know that chloroform was sometimes used as an acrylic solvent, so make sure you work in a ventilated area to not get, well, chloroformed. Putting on the lid gives this satisfying feeling of a snug fit. Now we can get rid of it and start playing. All these shapes have exactly the same width in all directions, 90mm in this case. So the top part remains at the same distance from the table when it's rolled over them. These little shapes could not hold something heavy, like, let's say, me. So I made a giant version to play with. I started by showing off my ninja skills, balancing only on the cylinder. Moving on to the special shapes, things started to get a little awkward. Rolling on 2 of the shapes was super smooth and was very satisfying. If you're curious to find out why these shapes behave the way they do, then stay tuned for my next video, in which I'll try to give an intuitive explanation for what's going on here. You can find all the templates used in this project over on my website. If you enjoy my videos and want to help me produce more of them, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Until next time, bye.